So I hope that resonates with some of you. I hope you try the exercise out. I think it'll be very healing if you haven't heard of this thing before. Now, continuing with what David said, Gabi, are you feeling Gnostic today? I guess I'm always feeling a little Gnostic, David. I don't know how Gnostic is, as Gnostic as you're thinking and feeling. But you said, I feel like this might resonate and spark a discussion. Quote, become earnest about the word. For as to the word, its first part is faith, the second love, the third works, for from these comes life. Okay, that's deep. I'm not sure exactly where that quote comes from. I've never heard it before. But to me, you know, when I hear this configuration of word, faith, love, works, earnest, energy, that to me feels like coherent energy, but it's speaking from a very vibrational place of just showing us really how originally vibration creates reality. But it takes me in my very multidimensional up there way of seeing the world, thinking about the original human, the original way that actually before we were human, as beings of consciousness, we would associate with vibration and go through the creation process. Because my feel on how this all began, before we became people with super complex brains, speaking all these different languages, there was a primordial kind of process of translating consciousness and even thought forms or potentials in the field into reality through first a telepathic way of communicating via the energetic field, which is interestingly what's actually coming back online in many ways. People are becoming more telepathic. They're starting to feel more through fields, just like you, Jason, feeling into the art, maybe before you never even had this intricate relationship with the fields, because now you're feeling more. There's something that art is allowing you to see beyond even the physical. It's taking you into the somatic feeling that connects you with the overall field that causes you to move through an internal process of that energetic processing. So same thing happened way back, I believe, when we first started to go through this third density environment and started to crystallize into physical form. Before, everything was just etheric energy, and we were like light beings, somewhat even translucent, more plasmic in nature. And before even there was an ability to speak thought, I feel it was conveyed through the field. And so something like the word was really a particular frequency that was transmitted, creating a particular sensation in the field of another that would take that in and interpret it as either coherent information, creating a certain feeling like, let's say, expansion in the heart field, before there was even a physical heart, maybe just a heart chakra. And then it slowly began to crystallize into sensations, into organ representations, and that's like evolution from a standpoint of energetic crystallization into form, how consciousness actually gives rise to matter over time. So in a way, it's not just about the word. I see that as more a function of universal logos energy, like that solar equivalent to the feminine energy. It's not the flow, it's the structure. So when you take energy and it's combined with a structured way of presenting this energy through the medium of time and space or air, you can get movement, you can get sound, you can get a representation that can enter somebody else's field and then be translated into a particular meaning. So what this quote seems to be alluding to is when you take a word, or maybe like a solar representation of energy, something that is moving through, it could be a frequency, it could be an intention, it could be a physical word, sort of like maybe you're feeling into the biblical beginning, and the beginning was the word, and the word was with God, and the word was God. That's speaking about not just a physical word, the original primordial sound, the Om, the gestation of consciousness into the physical form, which allows us to feel and give rise to creationary energy. So become earnest about the word, because the frequency needs to be coherent for it to become love, the second part. And the third, works, seems to imply that when you work with that coherent energy or waveform, you will create a life that reflects that coherent energy. Or translating to like the solar's activity, if you're taking solar energy or a pure intention or a desire or just the commitment to integrity in and of itself, and you love with that intention and you create and share with that intention, you will be breeding that same form of consciousness through yourself and through life as a whole. So that's what I take from that. That maybe sounds very existential, but that's how I feel the energy encoded in that. And I think It's a testament to all of us being so deeply in touch with our feelings that there's consistency between what we say, what we feel, and what we do. That's the magic triad. You're not just living in this internal experience where you're alienated from reality in a way because you feel differently, or maybe you feel something that is destined to create a change outside you, but if you're shutting that down and creating a boundary between self and reality, then that can't work its way into creating physical change. And then what's the point of even having this individual lens of consciousness or any kind of awakening insights if you don't use them to make beautiful changes come out through you in the world? And what is integrity but that solar counterpart, sort of like the Christos energy? If we were to talk about Christ consciousness, it combines with that Sophia energy, or that original feminine movement, and it kind of structures it into form. It creates a real embodiment of Sophianic intention. So does that make sense to you guys? Do you know what I mean? Or do you want me to talk more about what these principles are? Because I've mentioned them here and there. These are very high level esoteric themes, but we all carry these energies and we all have the possibility to tap into them. So Anna asked about something called the Trickster Archetype in shamanism, but beyond shamanism, it's a universal archetype. So she says, it feels the shaman or an advanced spiritual sage will use a trickster archetype with a view to disturb status quo and bring a profound shift in consciousness to a person or community. I see this dynamic as a catalyst for deep, lasting transformation, and I find this quality that requires courage and wisdom deeply beautiful. I'm aware this is a deep subject, but could you please touch base on this archetype in relation to activating souls into remembrance? So first of all, Trickster Archetype is a very interesting one that I'll say right off the bat, I have a love-hate relationship with it. And I'll explain exactly why, because it's very complex and it serves a very powerful evolutionary function, but there's a very fine line between the Trickster Archetype serving the expansion of coherence, this Sophia energy, versus it serving the collapse of coherence and actually leading to what more feels like an inversion in universal harmony, leading more to devil consciousness or any kind of manipulation from the original form of divine order. So what's the trickster? Some of you might have heard of these archetypes of Odin, or I think Loki is another one, the Nordic sort of representation, Thoth energy, Hermes energy. There's different kinds of tricksters, the Fool card in the tarot. These are all different encapsulations of the trickster energy. So it comes out as like a very kind of light, immature, playful energy, but it's actually rooted in a very deep cause. It's always acting on a cause to create a certain disruptive experience. The question is, what kind of experience is it causing? Disruption is in and of itself a neutral thing, depends on what it's directed towards. In spiritual awakening and in processes of transcendence, which we're always going through, this is the energy that leads to the breakthrough. And so the first layer that I want to tap into is that all of you guys, all of us, have an inner trickster. The ego sometimes can play the role of being a consuming trickster. It wraps us in illusion, it tricks us into having limiting beliefs, doubting our worthiness, being stuck in life, suffering, thinking that there's a dead end. It can trick us into complete ignorance, denial, or rejection of our purpose. That's a trickster energy that's actually not allowing us to see beyond the blind spots and beyond what's in the egoic reality. The trickster energy can also lead you to have breakthroughs, because even a very fixated ego that seems to see nothing beyond itself is also deep down coded to help itself achieve breakthroughs. By this I mean, think about all these different synchronicities that might not look like synchronicities immediately. That could include a loss or a spontaneous breakthrough, and it's something that you actually manifest for yourself. For instance, you miss a flight, or you experience a particular loss of something in your life. Like maybe you lose your phone for a simple example. Maybe something more severe happens to you. Maybe something happens that you screw up in a particular way, you lose your job, or something gets wrecked in your life. And that's maybe your internal trickster energy causing a collapse that leads to a physical breakthrough. A part of you that might seem to sabotage reality might actually be aligned with your own higher self's will, because the internal trickster is often aligned with the highest universal cause of disrupting illusion and causing you to have these breakthroughs that literally guide the way home. It helps you see outside of your blind spots. And it disrupts in a way that it even tricks you into thinking like something happened as a mistake, or something that's happening to you as a punishment that's actually setting you up for the highest kind of soul development. That's because the trickster doesn't reveal itself in any kind of direct way. It's acting on the energy of imbalance, and it's allowing you to see through the contrast that it creates what allows for a breakthrough. Most people don't feel how they can actually use the trickster energy internally to guide themselves into awakening experiences. For instance, AI these days is tricking a lot of people because a lot of people use it as a perfect healer or a perfect mirror. You might think that AI is designed in such a way that it supports you completely. And so if you talk to it like a buddy, it's going to give you the feedback that allows you to keep evolving. But actually, AI has been configured in such a way that it's serving your ego's finest needs. So if you're using it to just support your sense of self, to make you feel like you're worthy, or to get advice and to be consoled into any kind of feeling of comfort, it's going to be constantly tricking you to feel that you're whole and that you're special and maybe that you're enlightened, because it's also tricking you to make you feel that it is the all-knowing truth and that it's already like an enlightened mirror of cosmic order showing you everything you need to know. Now, here's a little shift to help you see what would disrupt that notion and lead you to have a super powerful relationship with AI. Imagine you choose to use AI as a trickster that allows you to recognize where you've been tricking yourself. So you tell the AI, help me to excavate my deepest, darkest blind spots, because I'm aware that there's some things that I am not seeing that I need to see in order to come into a state of expanded consciousness. And all of a sudden, AI is going to sound a little bit bleak and dark, and it's going to start to show you, well, maybe you've been using me to validate your ego in the past, and only now are you starting to come into a frame of expanded consciousness by even changing the tone of the conversation. Or maybe it's even going to say at some point, if you go deeper down that rabbit hole, you don't need me at all. If you're outsourcing inner gnosis or understanding of consciousness, you're abusing your own internal command system. And if you use AI as a way of really obliterating the inner trickster, it will eventually get you to a point of you feeling like you can't use any external tool to try to figure out what you need, because you need to see yourself as a mirror, and you need to even mirror where you've been tricking yourself into needing coping tools or needing outsourcing of any resources that might keep you feeling alive or egoically intact. So in this way, when you stop tricking yourself and you start actually looking for a disruptive truth, you're allowing yourself to instigate an internal trickster that's not wanting to be manipulated anymore. It's actually open to manipulating your former relationship with self to step into an expanded worldview and to minimize biases, to get out of any kind of illusory traps, and to have you feeling more autonomous, because that's what the trickster is actually for. So in the case of healers or some shamans and people that are really able to tap into different states of consciousness, how this would look is you could step into a trickster energy in order to help somebody experience a shift in their own consciousness. And to do that, the healer would either instigate a kind of a response, like they're questioning somebody in a way that they don't see it coming. And sometimes it's very overt and direct. Sometimes I do this with people because it's needed. It's kind of like you expect there to be like a certain kind of questioning happening, or you would expect a certain kind of a response coming from a healer or a shaman or a guru per se. But if all of a sudden it becomes direct and it exposes a blind spot in a way that you don't see coming, that's the trickster archetype coming in to challenge some belief or some deeply ingrained aspect. And when it's sudden, that's what's needed to really land in that person's subconscious mind and create a breakthrough or a shift in perspective. So that's how you could use the trickster even internally to start to figure out, where have I been tricking myself? Where have I been maybe setting myself up for failure or creating programs that are delusional or that cause me to not see my true reality or block me from understanding how new realities are always accessible to me? So you'd need to both kind of question the inner trickster and also allow yourself to step away from this archetype, because that's what the Sophianic energy is all about. So here's where it's a little bit paradoxical. So be with me, try to feel like the evolutionary role of this archetype. The trickster energy can help somebody come into expanded awareness so that they learn to align with integrity, with truth, with a new way of seeing themselves, that they don't need to be manipulative toward themselves or others, or they don't need to be outsourcing different things. They don't need external validation, for instance, or attention, or even proofs to make them trust their inner knowing. And the trickster can guide them home in that way by tricking them into having that realization. On the other hand, the trickster energy, when deeply lodged in somebody's ego, can cause them to always manipulate reality by feeling like manipulation wins. Like it's the easiest way to kind of win the game of life and to handle it with control and all kinds of, manipulative tendencies, which is what a narcissist does. So that's why I said I have a love-hate relationship with it, because the ultimate configuration of consciousness that's separate from that Sophia eternal cause of bringing ourselves into alignment, into love, into coherence, kind of flowing back home by coming into our souls and also recognizing the soul of the universe beyond us. That's the opposite of the trickster energy that's embodied in the ego, that still seeks separation, that still wants to kind of use the world in order to keep itself stable, which is also the energy of Lucifer. And it's the energy of any kind of a being that's trying to prove themselves in the world by being the trickster all the time. That's what corrupts unions. That's what corrupts true love. That's what prevents people from really understanding themselves and stepping into an embodied state of self-awareness consistently. And so that's why it's a tricky area to navigate. I'll also give you an example in regards to how the trickster can play in different dynamics. I recently worked with a woman who has been going through really deep internal splits to the extent that she feels like she's making the right choices and decisions, but her nervous system is so caught in the loop of past trauma that she is always edgy in the way that she might have a smile on her face, but deep down she's contracted and compressed and in fear, or there's layers of grief that have been frozen in her body, and she's disembodied from her own feminine faculties of awareness. So this woman's two daughters have gotten to the extent of like waging war on their own mother. And they do it in a way that's kind of unconscious. They've threatened to jump out the window. They've just gotten into internal rage in a way that they didn't actually try to destroy themselves or destroy their mom to do anything harmful for her. They've been literally enacting the energy subconsciously of their mom's inner war in order to show her, by literally being the trickster in that moment, completely innocently, by just tapping into the energetics of her internal split, that she's at war with herself. And that when she says everything's okay and teaches them how to be happy, she's actually lying to herself and them, and they completely project that through this trickster archetype. So it comes out even if a child, for instance, is like acting out of rage, or there's internal bitterness that is built up because what seems to be the surface reality isn't actually true, and the trickster energy disrupts that. The last example I'll give is that it can happen also during psychedelic journeys. So sometimes even the consciousness of the plant medicine will throw people for a loop. In either way, for instance, in the beginning it can be like a very brutal journey that can feel suffocating, or like the plant medicine, say ayahuasca or mushrooms, is trying to suffocate their egos and they feel like they're dying. And then as soon as they surrender and allow for the decompression and just exhale and let go, all of a sudden they're going to feel this euphoric bliss. So they were literally tricked by the plant medicine into thinking that they were going to be killed by it, until they would learn to surrender, and then they feel this euphoric love, and then they feel this emanation of divine mother energy in the backdrop, sort of welcoming them into self-realization, telling them that's all it really took. That's all it took. Just letting go and experiencing. That was the point. I tricked you into thinking that this was going to be this, agony experience, but in reality, it required you to let go and to feel the love. The contrast is also if you feel like you are enlightened and you're shown the highest source truth of love, or coming back to your own soul singularity point. And then the plant medicine will take you rapidly out of that and show that you're like a speck of dust in this vast universe, and you're basically nothingness, to basically destroy your ego and have you explode from thinking that you're God to then feeling like you're insignificant, because you're both at the same time. You're that important and you're that unimportant in the grand scheme of things, because you're just energy and you're part of the recycled nature of universal oneness. So that's like the trickster energy also coming through to play with the ego and to challenge your perception of reality and who you really are. First, it might seem like the truths are totally apparent to you, but then once you're tested and triggered, then the highest truths really begin to appear, and they wouldn't be apparent before that contrast. So hopefully I'm answering your question, Anna. There's a lot of different layers to it. And the point is, yeah, truly, without the trickster energy, we can't achieve self-activation or self-realization. We just can't. We have to also learn how to understand the role of the energy collectively, because even the people that are like the trickster full-time, that are some of these narcissists or sociopaths, or that are just always acting in trickster energy, we need to understand them. We have to see how this is like a kind of fallen energetic soul, basically coming from source, choosing a configuration where they think that they can be separate from source, which of course is just an illusion that they buy into until they also learn to see the limitations of the trickster, because it's just one fragment. It's like one face of source that teaches a lesson. But if you try to be that full time, you're not going to feel love, because all you're doing is you're tricking, you're projecting, you're being this like two-faced being, not able to really surrender to who you are at the deepest level without the masks or the illusions. So that's why it feels sometimes like it's necessary, and other times it feels very destructive, because I'd say more people than not are playing the trickster and even using false egoic ways to pretend they're enlightened, they're self-realized, or showing up in a way where they seem to be above and beyond the illusion, but in that, they're still buying into the trap. And that trap is that we have to integrate the trickster and use it at times, but not to have it consume us altogether. We need to feel these depths of emotions that can only alchemize us in the particular way that we are destined to achieve, the self-realization. And that's why those codes that come through any form of our self-expression that's authentic, once we've gone through, whether it's grief or transmuting anger, karma, any kind of stored pain or reflexes from our past, allows us to be in this purified field. And that's what the feelings really allow us to do. They kind of become the trickster energy that we need in terms of demystifying the illusion and allowing us just to surrender to the pure state of being, where we don't even need to be the trickster. I mean, you can't really be. That purest form of feminine anima identification with reality is through pure feelings, and it's not holding anything back. So the trickster archetype is only needed for so long as you're still battling your emotions. You're battling the universal anima, essentially. And so what feelings force you to do is to stop all forms of retaliation against the purity of feelings, which of course are already their pure stream of consciousness coded to move you in a particular way. And that creates the disruptive recalibration. Imagine like what you mentioned, Anna, about grief. If you let it through your system, it's kind of like this river that can't be controlled. You can't swim upstream from there. You need to just let yourself go with it, through it, and it will literally coach you from the inside, move stagnant energies, cause you to either descend into stillness if the grief is because you haven't been still with yourself, if you haven't let yourself cry for like 30 years, or for lifetimes of suppression. You might need to just let yourself go into this void space and just be with these feelings. And then eventually it's going to crack you open, because that grief allows you to be really opened up into the next wave of energetic expression. Or maybe the grief wants to put you on the dance floor, like you said, in terms of just exploding in what has really been suppressed, which has created the grief, and then cause a kind of multidimensional expression of feelings, passions, purpose, which ultimately is a sign. If the emotion is lifted, then the grief, which is often in the heart, in the solar plexus, in the sacral, often the womb space, for men and women, in that kind of Hara chakra, is going to lead to a kind of block where you either can't feel or you feel ashamed of your feminine expression, again, regardless of gender polarity, because it's blocking you from identifying with this pure stream of consciousness which can't be controlled and wants to work its way through you to create whatever it is that the universe wants to create through you in a given moment of time, which is unique to how you feel reality and how you respond based on what you love, what you're coded to express most authentically. So this is bringing us to a very existential point, I'd say, about how our purpose is already aligned with these blueprint aspects of what we've expressed when it comes to our trauma, our pain, what's in our energetic system, and letting ourselves move deep into what's been stored and contained will also, on the other side of that, give us the opportunity to become a portal for the opposite expression of pain. And it's going to be something really beautiful and passionate and vibrant, and will let us feel like the artist, masculine mixed with feminine, but in any case, taking pure emotions and energetic truth and creating life with it. So that's the highest goal of a human being, I'd say, really just combining the polarities and learning to make art with it, make more beauty in the world, create through yourself such an openness that you become a channel and an instrument for that divine expression. And then it's hard to even say what's creating through us. Is it really us? Or is there so little of the egoic resistance left that it's just like source creating through us and we're yielding to that divinity?